I never thought I'd watch my own wife laugh about having a backup husband while I was standing right there. But that's exactly what happened the night everything fell apart. Everyone at the party thought it was a joke, but I knew it wasn't. You want to hear how that night went from laughter to absolute chaos? Stick around, and before we get into it, don't forget to hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments what you would have done if you were in my shoes. 3 weeks earlier, my wife Jenna had suggested throwing a backyard party for our 10th wedding anniversary. I wasn't thrilled about it. Things between us hadn't been great for months. She'd been distant, buried in her phone, saying she was too tired for conversations that used to come naturally. But I agreed, thinking maybe celebrating would remind us why we got married in the first place. The evening of the party, our house was glowing with string lights. We had food on the tables, music playing, laughter floating through the air. Neighbors, co-workers, her friends from the gym, they were all there. I was manning the grill, flipping steaks, smiling when people passed by to compliment the setup. For a few moments, it felt almost normal again, like the marriage I remembered. Then I noticed him, standing near the bar with a drink in his hand. Tall, tan, confident, wearing that kind of grin only someone with a history feels entitled to. His name was Travis, her ex from years before me. The one she used to say was just a kid's mistake. I froze for a second, unsure whether I was imagining things. But when she walked over to him, touched his arm, and smiled like she'd just seen a long-lost friend, I knew this wasn't random. My wife had invited her ex to our anniversary party. I told myself to keep calm, not make a scene. I poured another drink, grilled another round, and tried to ignore the way she leaned in too close when they talked. Then her best friend, Lindsay, who'd had way too much wine, raised her glass and shouted, "Cheers to Jenna, smartest woman I know, always keeping a backup husband around." Everyone laughed, even Travis. I looked up, hoping Jenna would shut it down, say it was a dumb joke. But she didn't. She smiled. She laughed, loud and easy, like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. The laughter burned in my ears. Every single person around that patio was looking at me, waiting for my reaction, expecting me to laugh along. Instead, I put down my drink, walked over slowly, every step feeling heavier than the last. The chatter faded until all you could hear was the sizzle of the grill behind me. "Backup husband, huh?" I said with a calm smile. "That's clever. Never hurts to have a plan B." The group chuckled nervously. Jenna's face softened in relief, thinking I was playing along. Travis smirked, smug as ever, like he'd already won something. I reached into my pocket, pulled off my wedding ring, and rolled it between my fingers. It felt cold, heavy. "Well, no sense keeping both of us waiting," I said quietly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Tag in, buddy. She's all yours." I tossed the ring toward him. He caught it clumsily, staring down like I'd just handed him a live wire. The crowd went dead silent. No one moved. Jenna's smile vanished. Her eyes widened, her mouth opening to speak, but no words came out. The tension was suffocating. I just nodded, turned around, and walked through the crowd without another word. My shoes crunched against the patio stones. Behind me, I heard the sound of something shattering, maybe a glass, maybe her composure. I didn't look back. I went inside, grabbed my keys from the counter, and walked out of my own house, leaving the party behind like a bad dream. As I drove away, my phone started buzzing nonstop, her calls, her texts, but I ignored every single one. That laughter kept echoing in my mind. Not the words, not even the joke, just the sound of her laughing while the man she used to love stood beside her. I realized something on that drive. It wasn't anger I felt. It was clarity, a sharp, clean understanding that this woman wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she hadn't been for a long time. That night, I showed up at my brother Mike's house unannounced. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and didn't say a word, just stepped aside and said, "Beer's in the fridge." I sat on his couch, staring at the floor, the sound of the game on TV filling the silence. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jenna. Please, can we talk? I put it face down on the table. I wasn't ready to talk. I wasn't ready to feel anything yet. Mike finally turned down the volume and said quietly, "You want to tell me what happened?" I told him everything about the party, the joke, the ring, the walkout. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he leaned back, nodded, and said, "Good. You did the right thing." I didn't feel good. I felt empty, like 5 years of effort had just collapsed in silence. I thought that was the end of it, but I was wrong. It was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke up on my brother's couch with sunlight creeping through the blinds and the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then it all came flooding back. The laughter, the silence, the ring in Travis's hand. My phone was still buzzing on the table, lighting up every few seconds with messages from Jenna. 32 missed calls, 20 texts, all unread. Mike poured 2 mugs of coffee and set one in front of me. "You going back there today?" he asked. I shook my head. Not yet. I wasn't sure what I'd even say if I did. I spent most of that day in silence, sitting on his porch while he mowed the lawn, trying to piece together how my marriage had gone so wrong without me noticing. By the afternoon, curiosity got the better of me, and I finally opened my phone. The messages were desperate. "Please, let me explain. It was a joke. You're overreacting. Everyone's talking about what you did." That last one hit hard. I'd been humiliated, and somehow she thought I was the one who owed her an apology. I turned the phone off again. That night, I lay awake on the couch staring at the ceiling, thinking about the months before the party. She joined a new gym earlier that year, started dressing differently, texting late at night with the screen tilted away from me. When I asked who it was, she'd laugh it off. "Just the girls," she said. I wanted to believe her. Now, I wasn't so sure. Monday morning, after she left for work, I drove back to the house. I told myself it was just to grab my clothes, some documents, maybe a few personal things. But the moment I walked through that door, the silence hit me. Plates still sat on the counter from the party. Empty cups everywhere. The half-burned-out tiki torches in the yard looked like relics from a war zone. I went straight to the bedroom. My suitcase was half full when I noticed her tablet sitting on the nightstand. She'd left it unlocked. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Her message app was open, and there it was, weeks of conversations with Travis. Nothing explicit, but everything that mattered. "You always knew how to make me laugh. He doesn't get me the way you do. I miss this." My hands trembled as I scrolled through, each message cutting deeper than the last. They'd been texting since February. Gym sessions, coffee meetups, inside jokes. He called her J. She called him T. My jaw clenched as I took photos of the screen, one after another, for proof I'd probably never use but couldn't ignore. I finished packing, locked the door behind me, and drove straight back to Mike's. He was at work, so I sat in the driveway for a while, trying to breathe. The anger finally started to catch up to me, not the loud, explosive kind, but a steady, quiet fury. The kind that makes your chest feel tight and your thoughts razor sharp. By the time Mike got home, I'd already looked up divorce lawyers online. He walked into the living room, saw my laptop open, and nodded. "You're sure about this?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm done." Wednesday afternoon, I met with a lawyer named Roger. He was calm, gray-haired, the kind of man who'd seen it all before. He listened to everything, asked a few questions, and finally said, "Do you want to file, or are you hoping for reconciliation?" "File," I said without hesitation. That word felt heavier than I expected, like I'd just drawn a line that couldn't be erased. I left his office feeling both numb and strangely free. My phone buzzed again as I got into my truck. "Jenna, we need to talk." I typed back, "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice Saturday night." Her reply came instantly. "It was a joke. Please don't do this." I stared at that message for a long time before responding. I saw the texts. All of them. "Don't contact me again unless it's through a lawyer." Then I blocked her number. That night, Mike handed me a beer and said, "You're handling this better than most." I didn't feel like I was handling anything. I felt hollow. The house, the future, everything I'd built with her, it all felt like smoke now. I kept seeing her face that night at the party, the way she laughed while looking at him, not me. It wasn't about the joke. It wasn't even about the messages. It was about that look. The realization that I'd been standing in my own marriage as the backup plan. The next morning, I woke up early and started organizing my life like it was someone else's project. New bank account, new mailing address, new passwords. Roger called later that day to confirm the paperwork had been filed. She'll be served by Friday, he said. I thanked him and hung up. Friday came fast. I didn't hear from her, but I heard from Mike. She'd called his phone, crying, begging him to convince me to talk to her. He handed me the phone. You want to? No, I picked up anyway. What? I asked flatly. How could you do this? She said between sobs. Without even trying? Trying. I said, you mean like how you try to hide your little emotional affair? It wasn't like that. We were just friends. I laughed once, a dry, humorless sound. Friends don't text each other at midnight about how much they miss laughing together. Friends don't get invited to anniversary parties. Silence. You wanted a backup husband, I said finally. Congratulations. Now you've got him. She started crying harder, but I'd already hung up. Mike handed me another beer, shaking his head. Brutal, he said. Necessary, I answered. And for the first time that week, I almost smiled. Over the next few days, I started noticing things I'd ignored for months. Patterns that had been right in front of me. Every time she'd said she was staying late at work, every new outfit, every gym session that somehow lasted 3 hours, it all began to fit together like pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to finish. Roger, my lawyer, had told me to keep documentation. Judges like facts, not emotions, he'd said. So I spent hours sitting at Mike's kitchen table, combing through old bank statements and phone records. That's when I saw them, multiple charges from the same coffee shop downtown. February, March, April. Always on weekdays. Always mid-afternoon, right when she claimed to be buried in meetings. One receipt stood out. Valentine's Day, 2:15 p.m., $46.78. She told me she was working late that day. I'd made her dinner, candles and all. She came home around 8, said she was exhausted. I remember thinking it was strange she didn't smell like her office. She smelled like cinnamon and roasted coffee. I thought it was from a coworker's perfume. Now I knew better. I printed everything and arranged it chronologically. When Mike got home from work, he stopped dead in the doorway. You look like a detective. Maybe I am, I said. A detective in my own failed marriage. He sat down next to me, flipping through the pages. Look at this. I pointed to one entry. March 22nd, lunch at that same place, 1:30. But here, text from her at 1:40 saying she's stuck in a meeting. Mike let out a low whistle. 15 times, I said quietly. That's how many lies I can prove. That's just the ones you can prove, he replied. There are probably more. He wasn't wrong. The more I looked, the clearer it became that she'd been building something with him long before that party. Maybe not physical yet, but emotional, intimate, the kind of connection you don't share with someone if your marriage means anything. Around that time, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hey man, it's Kyle, from the party. I vaguely remembered him, one of her co-workers' husbands. Listen, he said, I know this is weird, but I thought you should know something about that night. My grip on the phone tightened. Go on. That whole backup husband thing. It wasn't some random joke. Lindsay planned it. She told a few of us beforehand. Said it'd be hilarious. Your wife knew. She said it'd be fine. I felt something inside me go cold. She knew? Yeah, Kyle said quietly. They even laughed about it earlier that week. Thought you'd just play along. I didn't speak for a few seconds. My voice came out calm when I finally did. Thanks for telling me. For what it's worth, he said. The way you handled it, respect, man. Most guys would have started swinging. You just walked. After I hung up, I sat there staring at the wall, numb. She hadn't just let that joke happen, she'd approved it. Maybe even encouraged it. She'd turned my marriage into a punchline and expected me to laugh along. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face at that party, smiling at him, confident that I'd stay quiet. Mike tried to distract me with a movie, but my mind was somewhere else, replaying 5 years of conversations through a new lens. How many times had I been dismissed, ignored, talked over, all because she was already halfway out the door in her mind? The next morning, Roger called. "She's contesting the divorce," he said. "Says you abandoned the marriage by walking out. Also asking for spousal support." I laughed out loud, disbelief mixing with anger. "She's the one who wrecked it." "I know, but she's claiming she can't afford rent without your help. She can move in with him," I said flatly. "Tell her that." Roger chuckled. "I'll put it more professionally, but message received." After hanging up, I realized something. The anger that had burned through me for days had finally started to fade, replaced by something colder, clarity. I wasn't fighting for her anymore. I was fighting for my dignity. That evening, Mike and I sat on the porch watching the sunset, beers in hand. He looked at me and said, "You're handling this like a soldier." I smiled faintly. "You ever notice how quiet things get after the explosion?" He frowned. "What do you mean?" "After all the shouting, the chaos, what's left is silence. But it's not empty. It's peaceful." He nodded slowly. "That's when you know you're moving on." Days passed. I started running again. Early mornings before work, the cool air clearing my head. I wasn't trying to fix anything anymore. I was rebuilding, piece by piece. I'd thought that party was the moment everything ended. But now I saw it differently. That was just the moment I stopped pretending. She'd been slipping away for months, maybe years. I'd just been too loyal, too hopeful to see it. Roger called again on a Thursday. "She's backed off the support demand," he said. "Looks like she's starting to accept it's over." "Good," I replied. "Let's finish this." He paused. "You're handling this better than most. Usually, there's yelling, begging, second chances. You're steady." "Because I'm done living in a lie," I said. "Once you see the truth, you can't unsee it." That night, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. No anger, no noise, just peace. 2 weeks later, I was back at Roger's office signing the last batch of documents. The air felt different, lighter somehow, as if the weight I'd been carrying for months was finally starting to lift. The papers were thick, full of signatures and stamps, but all they really said was one simple truth. It was over. When I walked out of his office that afternoon, I didn't look back. I didn't feel like a man who'd lost something. I felt like a man who'd finally stopped begging to keep what was already gone. I moved into a small rental house across town a few days later. 2 bedrooms, quiet street, nothing fancy, but it was mine. The first night I slept there, I realized it was the first time in years that the silence didn't bother me. I cooked myself dinner, opened a beer, and sat out on the porch watching the neighbors walk their dogs, just breathing. No arguments, no tension, no pretending everything was fine. My phone buzzed once that night, an unknown number. I didn't answer. The next morning, Roger called to tell me she'd signed the final paperwork. It was official. Divorced. I expected to feel something. A sting, regret, sadness, but all I felt was relief. She called Mike's phone later that week. He handed it to me, raising his eyebrows. I sighed and answered. "What do you want, Jenna?" Her voice was small, cracked. "I just needed to talk." "Please." "About what?" "I made a mistake," she said quietly. "It wasn't what you think. Travis and we never." I cut her off. "Don't. I don't care." "You don't care?" she said, her voice rising. "We were married 10 years. "Yeah," I said. "And you spent the last one acting like you were auditioning for a replacement. You wanted a backup husband? Now you've got him. Make it work." She went silent for a few seconds. Then, barely a whisper, "He's gone." "Of course he is," I said. "That's what people like him do." I ended the call before she could say anything else. Mike looked at me, half impressed, half sad. "You good?" "Getting there." A few days later, I stopped by the hardware store to pick up paint for the new place. As I was checking out, a familiar voice called my name. I turned around. It was Kyle, the same guy who'd called to tell me about the joke. He looked uncomfortable, like he had something heavy on his chest. "Hey man," he said. "How have you been?" "Better," I said honestly. "Divorce went through." "Yeah, I heard," he said. "Listen, I didn't want to bring this up, but you should know. Jenna and Travis didn't last. 2 weeks, maybe 3. He wasn't serious. Guess he liked the idea more than the reality." I just nodded. "Doesn't change anything." "No," he agreed. "But maybe it helps to know you made the right call." I paid for my paint, thanked him, and walked out without looking back. That night, I painted the living room walls while music played from my old speaker. It felt symbolic somehow, covering old colors, making something new. Mike came over later with pizza and a six-pack. We sat on the floor eating straight from the box, laughing about old stories. For the first time in a long time, it felt like the world had stopped spinning so fast. "You ever going to start dating again?" Mike asked. "Not yet," I said. "Right now, I'm good being alone. I want to figure out who I am when I'm not cleaning up someone else's mess." He nodded. "That's probably smart." A few months passed. Work picked up, and I threw myself into it. My boss noticed, offered me a promotion, better pay, better hours. I took it. I started going to a new gym, different side of town. Every morning, I ran a few miles before sunrise, the rhythm of my feet on the pavement becoming a kind of therapy. I wasn't running from anything anymore. I was running towards something. 6 months after the divorce, I saw her for the first time since it was final. I was at a gas station filling up my truck when she pulled in at the next pump. She looked smaller somehow, older, tired. She saw me, froze for a second, then gave a faint, uncertain smile. I nodded once, but didn't say a word. There was nothing left to say. When the tank was full, I got in the truck and drove away. No anger, no bitterness, just peace. That night, sitting on my porch, I thought about how far I'd come. About how close I'd been to spending another decade with someone who saw me as a backup plan. I didn't feel hatred toward her anymore, just gratitude that I'd finally woken up. A year later, I got a message request on social media. Her name popped up. For a second, I thought about ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. The message was short. "You were right about everything. I was using you as a safety net." I never got over him. I thought those feelings meant something, but they didn't. He didn't want me. "I'm sorry. I hope you're happy." I stared at it for a minute, then typed one sentence. "I am." That was it. No anger, no closure speech. Just the truth. Because I was happy. I'd started seeing someone new a few months earlier. A woman named Claire I'd met at a coffee shop. She wasn't dramatic or complicated. She listened, laughed easily, never made me feel like I had to earn her attention. It felt simple, real. Mike stopped by one evening before I headed to Claire's place. "You look good, man," he said. "Like you finally found peace." "I did," I said. "And it turns out peace looks a lot like being with someone who actually wants to be there." Later that night, as I drove past the street where my old house was, I didn't even slow down. I realized that chapter was closed for good. I'd walked away from that party with nothing but my dignity, and that was all I needed to rebuild everything. Funny thing about silence, it can sound like heartbreak at first, but eventually, it starts to sound like freedom. And if you've ever been through something like this, you know what I mean. If you made it this far, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and tell me in the comments what you would have done if you were me. Because sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. It's the loudest way to say, "I'm done being plan B."